want to just introduce is Don Eaton over here, who can introduce himself better, but he was the head of the Elora Center for Environmental Excellence. It's a great organization. It's a non-profit group. He can tell you all the things that they're doing. He's now retired from that, but he's by no means retired. And he will present a whole series of ideas about what specifically we might be able to do to actually reduce our energy in the home. So this is Don Eaton.
I'm going to talk about a couple things. The first is the evolution of housing and why houses can and have to evolve. And the second is a strategy for the evolution of your house. And then from there, hopefully, we can actually spend some time talking about your houses. The houses have to evolve, and I'm talking about this because I run into a lot of people who say you can't change the old houses because they were built to breathe or so on. But in fact, houses have to evolve because of energy costs, which we all know about. Resource availability, as we're running out of stuff, it's getting more expensive, and a lot of my friends think we're not going to have natural gas that much longer. And also comfort expectations. When I was a kid, no one thought that in the middle of winter you could run around in the house in your underwear. Houses were cold. Whereas now, if you buy a new house, everyone expects that you can run around in your underwear in every room. My house that I live in now was built in 1880. It has rooms that didn't even have any heat. So our expectations of the comfort of houses have changed. My house, 1880, didn't have indoor plumbing, didn't have central heat, didn't have electricity. Now, if it hadn't made those changes, if it hadn't evolved, I would like to think I wouldn't be living in it now. The houses in 1930s used what's called gravity for heat distribution. Some of you will remember what's called the octopuses that used to be in basements with great big giant ducts, knob and tube wiring. When I started framing houses in the late 60s and 70s, we had no ventilation. Insulation was kind of an extra if you wanted a little bit in your attic. We didn't design our heating systems, so we got uneven distribution of where the heat went. Some rooms are hot, some rooms are cold. In the 90s, the building code, the way it works, it tends to work like this, where someone says, oh, we need more insulation. So they change the building code, and then a few years later they say, oh, well, now we made the houses really tighter and they're all filled with mold. So now we need some ventilation. And as if in a matter of fact, in the late 80s and early 90s, the better your builder was, the crummier your house became. Because the really good builders built them tight, gave you lots of insulation and so on. But at the time, all you needed was a window that could open in the bathroom for ventilation for the house. I know good builders that actually went back to every house they built then and installed a central ventilating system just because they realized there was going to be nothing but mold problems along the way. So, you know, there's been a change from those houses where we've learned more, we've changed what we expect from a house. Our goal is to make homes that are efficient, healthy, comfortable, and use sustainable building practices. Particularly in this community, we'd like to see really low energy costs and zero net CO2 emissions. These are some steps to think about as you're making your home more efficient. And I'll talk about each one, but I work for Green Communities Canada, or I'm a member, and we've done energy audits on maybe 100,000 houses. And these are some of the things that kind of stand out from that database. The thermal envelope, defining the boundary line between the inside and the outside, is really an important part. Roughly 60% of these 100,000 houses have a mistake in the thermal envelope. For instance, you've got a porch that you use as a mudroom, a glass porch that you come into perhaps, and you use that as your mudroom. It's unheated in the winter, so in fact, it's outdoors. But off the kitchen, where it is, there's a window looking into it, and it's just a single pane window. It's not treating that porch like it's outdoors. It's treating it like it's sort of indoors and sort of outdoors. Cold rooms that people have in their houses. You know, in the basement, they're like root cellars and so on. There's a lot of confusion about those. We run into a lot of houses where people have put insulation between two heated areas, which really is a waste. You should pull that out and put it into the thermal envelope. The thermal boundary or thermal envelope, once you've clearly defined it, it needs to be moisture protected. That is, you don't want water like rain and groundwater to come in. You want it to be an air barrier, and you want it to have low thermal conductivity. You want it to have good insulation value. Okay, so you're clear about where you've put it, and then you make it like that. A real lot about housing is dealing with water. My little nieces, when I go and visit them, I always say, what wrecks houses? And they all yell, water! And in fact, that is what wrecks houses. And a whole bunch of what we do with houses is trying to control water in vapor form or liquid or other forms that will get in and destroy it. The second thing that I put on this list is start thinking about indoor air quality early in your renovation scheme or your upgrading scheme. The most important thing is remove the high sources of pollutants. Before you think about ventilation and things like that, first get rid of the things that are contributing to your bad air. Mold, of course, is obvious, and that's a water thing. Mold needs two things, water and cellulose, which can be paper or wood. So you have wood in your house, chances are, and you get some water on there, it sits there, you start to grow mold. Paper, like the paper that covers a sheet of drywall, gets damp, starts to grow mold. Usually you can control mold if you can control the water. VOCs, those are paints, finishes, and so on. There are more and more good paints and finishes that do not off-gas as much as some of the older stuff. It's very difficult to have good indoor air quality with wall-to-wall carpeting. So the orange shag may have to go. Particularly if there's people in the family with respiratory problems, asthma, allergies, things like that. It relates both to off-gassing. Treatments for stain, like Scotchgard and things like that they put on furniture and carpets and stuff. Formaldehyde gives it off all the time. The new car smell kind of smell, or the new furniture smell, it's probably a carcinogen. And but it does smell good when you first get it. Yeah.
Sorry, just a question. Like storing paint cans inside, is that, I guess,
A bad thing.
does seep out of
Yeah, because even if you've nailed the lid down, you let it sit there long enough, when you open it, it's hard as a rock. So that means all the VOCs have gotten out of it. So as much as possible, all those things, anything that's volatile, and particularly if it's like a petroleum product and so on, try and store it outside of the house if you have to have some.
freezing?
What's that?
What about freezing? Freezing of the product.
Well, I mean, then you maybe can't store it out of the house if it's something that's going to freeze. It depends on the particular thing.